Welcome to the Snowbird Investor Way, where we explore what it takes to create your dream cross-border lifestyle, living and investing amongst the sun, sand, and palm trees of Florida, even if you're not a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. I'm your host, Coach Roel. Right, so Stephanie Soave, welcome. You are a very, very accomplished individual. I'm already impressed with what we were chatting about just before we hit record. So you're a real estate investor for 14 years. You're a mom of 2 kids. You are a team leader, top producing agent near Barrie, Ontario, and you have a team that services people who want to get out of the busyness of the GTA and to have a little bit more balance. And you have this enviable cross-border lifestyle already that mixes the best of both what Canada has to offer and Florida. So welcome. I'm
Thank
excited to hear your
you.
stories. Where did it all begin for you? This whole Florida thing. Like, were you always a sun, sand, and palm trees type of person, or where
Yeah.
did this affinity to places that are warmer than what we know and love in Canada? Where did that all start for you?
Yeah. So I was a young mom at the time. I had just had my first son, Joseph. He's now 7 years old. And we would take him as a young child to Florida to visit every year since he was born. And I remember he was 4 at the time. So we had been taking him for 4 years at that time to Florida. And I remember him saying to me when he was really little, one day I'm going to live here. And it kind of, when you have those moments where you're, as a parent, you look and you're like, wait, that actually could be possible. Like he gave us something to think about. And so we've just all honestly always kind of visited Florida. It was the one place that I would go and visit friends, family. And since then, it's become part of our routine every year. So it made sense
Hmm.
to look to explore it further, especially as a family, right?
So it was actually your son that gave that
Yeah.
a start?
Yeah. We thought about it when he said it. We were like, wait, it actually could happen. Like what's preventing us? And as a Canadian, which I can empathize with so many Canadians, we figure that it might actually not be possible for us for so many reasons. We place these restrictions around why maybe it's not possible to live anywhere else of where we have a passport. And
Hmm.
then this entire passport discovery started. I started reading a lot about like nomad capitalism. How can you find passports around the world? Is it possible as a Canadian to live outside of these borders that we create for ourselves? And I just started researching like passports around the world, and it actually became a hobby
Mm.
after work. And I started to go through, following the breadcrumbs of what does it mean to have freedom, lifestyle
Hmm.
globally.
And then, and what's kind of the answer that you came up with?
Yeah, I think what I found as a mom, honestly, is that I find that it's really important to have more than one option. It's almost like
Mm.
insurance for your family, the way that
Oh
I can
yeah.
put it. When things get rocky in one area or another, it's nice to have an option and an out for your family to make decisions. And
Uh-huh.
so I found that over the last few years, how important it is to be able to look at what else is out there, and can I build a lifestyle elsewhere, and do I really need to make a decision of it has to be one or the other. And we're an
Right.
example of that, where we have built a hybrid lifestyle for ourselves as Canadians.
That's awesome. And that's what I'm very passionate about, giving
Yeah.
this platform for people like yourself to be able to be like, hey, tell others that
Yeah.
what you've discovered, right?
Yeah.
I'm always trying to push this philosophy or say, hey, you guys, you can have the best of both worlds. You don't have to
Right.
choose either or, you can
Sure.
have both and. So now that you're into it, like we spoke about a year and a half ago, as we were talking
Yes.
about earlier, but what's like, how would you describe your lifestyle right now?
Mhm.
Like, dare to, yeah, it's coming from me, so don't feel like
Yeah.
you're showing off or bragging, but paint me a picture. What does it look like? How do you spend your days? How do
Mhm.
you deal with kids? How much time do you get to spend in Florida? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we're not at a point where we're ready to really retire just yet. I'd like to retire earlier than what the norm of 65 is, which is like this number that we've created here in Canada. But we're still a working family, right? My husband works full time for a company, and I have a business that I run. We have two businesses now that we're running. I have two young children that are both in extracurricular activities, and I run a lucrative sales business in Ontario. And so for me, it was important that we could continue to build to build our businesses up, to be lucrative. And so throughout our day, it kind of like jumps around, as for most people it does, right? So the day begins with setting up our family for the day, and our children are in school here. Two of my kids go to two different schools. So one goes to a forest school, one is in the public school system. My husband commutes from Barrie to the city every day. He's very familiar with the downtown core. He's in the infrastructure business. So I often hear about what they're building, all these high rises that they're building. He's in the shoring industry. So that's super exciting for my husband. And then for myself, I go throughout my day really facilitating families' moves. So I'm not just worried about my own moves, but I facilitate so many families' moves that throughout the day, my day is spent truly facilitating phone calls, making sure that the families that I'm serving have what they need, making sure that my family has what we need. And then when it comes to seeing Florida and going to Florida, it's usually when our seasons aren't as peaked, right? So we're usually spending like summers in Florida when most people are not because it's hot. That's when we have more downtime, when our children are not in their programs full time. And then we're taking breaks throughout the year, just depending on when our season allows us to do so. And with running businesses, your seasons change every year. So I find some years we're there more often than we are in other years, but we roll with it, right? And so there's no like definite kind of schedule with us. Like, for example, we wanted to be down in Florida last month. Well, last month was our peak season, and so we didn't. And now we're kind of rolling into the spring season. So we kind of have to balance like, where is everybody at? And sometimes I just go on my own with my children, or my husband will be down there on his own. So it's not this like, it's really a hybrid approach. I love to say it that way, where we go with the flow, and that works really well for us,
And so over the last, let's say 6 months, how often have you been able to squeeze in a Florida trip?
Yeah, so we were actually there the entire summer working on our flip in Cape Coral.
Okay.
So we spent 2 full months in Cape Coral, and we came back for the September school season with our children. I've taken one trip back to go visit property that we have there, and it's nice because it's 2 hours away, as you know, right? So
Yeah.
for us to go and come, it's almost like we're going from Toronto to Muskoka, right? Like it's like a 2 hour difference, whether you're flying on a plane or you're driving, it feels very close, which is what we love. We're able to kind of squeeze in trips. Some of the times when we are there for more of an extended period of time. And so it just means that we find this like balance so that our businesses don't shut down completely when we're not in season, right?
And that's really interesting. That's really interesting. I don't know if the word is correct by saying I'm glad to hear that, because I want to highlight that fact that a lot of people think that, oh, if I'm going to create this cross-border lifestyle, I'm obligated to go to Florida, which some people will say, yeah, I would love that.
Of course.
But others say, well, it's not that realistic because I still have my career. I have no intention of relocating altogether. My kids are in school here. So you are a great example of I guess, something to contrast, where someone like myself and people that the families that you said you help to relocate entirely to the US or to Florida, you don't necessarily have to have that. Right. So do you recall, Stephanie, if there was a time where you thought, oh, I have to relocate as well to be able to have Florida? Or did you always know that you could have it just a little bit of Florida and mostly Canada? What was that sort of inner dialogue that you had?
Honestly, that is a really good question, because I only just discovered that I didn't have to. I had this interpretation that when I got my E2 visa, that was it. Like, prepare
you have to leave.
Right? Like, the kids are not going to school this season. So I went down with the intention of like, when I come back to Canada, the for sale sign's going up. Like, this is it. Then I came back and I was like, wait a minute. is this a prerequisite? Like, is this something that I've created in my mind that I see everybody else doing that I'm servicing, and so I have to do that? Or is there do what can I really create a life by design here? And so I spoke with a few attorneys and I got some perspectives, and it was like, wow, I'm not the only one thinking this. Now, truth be told, I would love to fully relocate to Florida full time. We haven't offloaded all of our what's the word? Responsibilities, and we have children that are invested in certain relationships here too, with friends and school systems and that kind of thing. So we're working through it. Ours is just hasn't been a quick switch of like, yes, we're making a committed decision today and we're going right now. I envy people who can do that, right? Who can sell their businesses and are able to relocate fully, and we help families do that. But I think for us, it's been a little bit slower of a moving process, because we see for us that there's opportunities in both countries. So we don't want to
Mm.
say no to opportunities in Canada or opportunities in the US. Like, we want to say yes to both and find ways to build teams so that we can create more time for ourselves to be in the state. That's where our true passion lies. So I think that, like, to answer your question, of course I had this thought process of, I need to offload everything. So
Hmm.
what we did instead was we actually earned the capital that we needed here to fund our lifestyle there instead. Because our thought process was like, we don't want to go there with nothing. Like, we want to be financially prepared. We want to have a property. We want to have the relationships built. We want to have the foundation built for us. We want to know where we want to be. And so doing this hybrid approach is really allowing us to get clear from when we first thought we knew where we wanted to live, where we wanted to plant roots. Now that's completely changed. So
Hmm.
I think it's worked well, being able and raising capital is the biggest thing for us right now. Um,
Hmm.
and that's been working well,
And why
so,
Florida, and why Cape Coral particularly as
you
your
know,
entry point?
yeah, Cape Coral actually came by accident. And this is what I mean about like just rolling with it, because we had no idea what Cape Coral was. I bought a property sight unseen. I didn't even see it.
Hmm.
So I literally said to my husband, okay, this deal came up. Friends of ours were selling a property. It needed a full gut job, and it was brought to our attention. This is a property for you. This is within your price point. Do you guys want to buy it? And anyway, long story short, we ended up buying it. And we learned Cape Coral through having bought a house in the area. Um,
Right.
but we laugh now because Steve's like, should we have been more prepared? Like, should we have maybe looked at the area? Is this where we wanted to be? And I said, well, if we didn't buy, we wouldn't have met the people we met. I wouldn't have the connections to refer people to now. I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have gone through the visa process, to be honest with you. And it was that one catalyst that gave me the push to keep going. Um,
Hmm.
so Cape Coral, why Cape Coral? I think that I feel, and personally, it's a safe area. Whenever we've been there,
Hmm.
we've seen a lot of families who live there, versus it being a really busy Airbnb style area. Like, there's still a lot of short term rental opportunity, but it's a lot of boaters, a lot of people who love to have their boats, and there's a lot of canals, um, a lot of bridges close to Fort Myers, not far from
Hmm.
Sanibel Island, Captiva. You're close to Naples, a drive away from Naples. It's a more affordable neighborhood getting up there now, right? And from when we bought till now, but opportunity at that time to renovate and sell. So that was our
Hmm.
thought process at the beginning, and that's why we chose to go ahead with Cape Coral. And we
And
liked
so
how
it's kind
close
of
it
it was kind of
was.
serendipitous because it first came that to your attention that a friend was selling their property in Cape Coral, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the whole thing started. Like, was there ever before your friend, uh, you found out that your friend was selling their property in Cape Coral? Was there another city or market that was top
Yeah.
of mind for you when you were doing your research?
Ideally, we always thought we'd wanted to live in Bradenton, to be honest,
Hmm.
just above
Yeah,
Sarasota.
Bradenton is kind of above Sarasota, south of Tampa,
Yeah, I
right?
really loved that neighborhood. Mhm.
And that's the one you were researching before Cape Coral came up?
Yeah. Yeah, I liked
Hmm.
Bradenton Beach. It was really close to Anna Maria Island. Of course, Anna Maria Island for us at the time was unaffordable. Beautiful, beautiful area. Maybe
Hmm.
one day, but we were looking at a place that gave us kind of that mix of like, we want to be right between kind of Anna Maria and Sarasota, and Bradenton offered a lot of family friendly communities for children our age as well, and like the sports school and all of that there. So that's kind of where our heart was initially when we were
Hmm.
search. Yeah.
It's interesting because I'm hearing a lot of common themes that I've heard from others as well, is who have been able to incorporate Florida in their lifestyle, is they talked about it.
Mm.
Just talking about it, just mentioning it to people, keeping it front and center every so often. You mentioned your son saying that
Mhm.
I'm going to live here one day, and then serendipitously, your friend, your contact said that they are selling a house in Cape Coral, so you honed in on that. I think that's a huge part of it. But question I want to ask you, Stephanie, is like, why bother? It's a
Mm.
lot of it's a lot of stuff that you went through, and you've helped other people relocate.
Mhm.
What's the value proposition, I guess you would
Yeah.
say, for Florida? Why is it? What is it? What's the attractor for you? Why not just make tons of money
Sure.
in Ontario and
Yeah.
then use Florida as like a vacation spot?
Yeah, of course. I think it's choice, period. And the answer to that is choice, having choice. And I think that when I
So you
see my
like the options? You're
the
saying
option for your
the options
kid,
it gives you.
yeah, for my children to be able to go to school there.
Uh
Um,
huh.
like I think about my son who loves sports. He's in different sports extracurricular activities. I think about the options for him for education down the road, and for her, for my daughter. I think
Mm-hmm.
about opportunities for my husband and I to build business together in the US, especially Florida because of the taxation.
Mm-hmm.
I really love the price of housing in Florida. I love the
Mm-hmm.
weather, and it gives you almost like this all encompassing. It's like all encompassing where you're also close to Canada, so we have big families on both sides. And so
Mm-hmm.
having that proximity to family is really important. So um, not having to take a 15-hour flight out of Europe to come back felt really nice for us too. And the business opportunities, like there's so many opportunities to build lucrative businesses in Florida. It feels
What have
very
you looked
open.
into?
We've looked into shoring for my husband, foundational, so construction,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of construction opportunity there. I know that the state really wants to improve a lot of their systems, their infrastructure, their sewage systems. So we've looked into that. We've looked into opportunities to actually invest in other people's businesses as well. We've looked into different syndications, land development opportunities, storage opportunities, RV parks. So there's a lot of ways to earn a passive income whereby you don't necessarily have to exert all of your own energy, time, bandwidth. And there's opportunities to get in at an entry level without needing to have millions to start. So for a family like us, where we're still working full time or we still have businesses full time, it allows us to get into a market that's passive. And that feels like comfortable for us to not have to
Mm-hmm.
exert even more energy as a busy family. So there's a lot that we've looked at there that is really interesting to us. And it's almost feels like it's at ground level, you know?
So to be devil's advocate here, because
Mhm.
you're preaching to the choir,
Yeah.
right? I,
Yeah.
I, I love the opportunity and the tax, well, the minimal state taxes here in Florida. But to be devil's advocate for a second,
Hmm.
are aren't those opportunities also available in Canada?
They are. Absolutely.
And so, are you also looking there, or is there something else
Yeah.
at play?
So I feel that in Ontario specifically, it's very expensive. So it
Housing
almost
wise, yes.
housing wise, business wise, it feels as though from what we've seen, you need to have quite a bit of capital to get started.
Mm-hmm.
And that for us, we're not really looking to put all of our eggs in one basket. So when we were investing in real estate 14 years ago, when we started our investing venture, 14 years ago, the cost was a lot more affordable. You could get into price of housing that you see right now in Florida, and they're 3 to 4 times the amount that they once were. And
Yeah.
so you need to have more of a down payment. You need to pay a lot of tax to get involved in certain projects. When you're offloading it, you're paying a lot of tax to get out. And so here's your profits diminishing quickly. And so
Yes.
we thought to ourselves, well, if we could use the same strategy in the US, then we're kind of where we were like 10 years ago, you know,
Yes.
without having to pay double land transfer tax, HST tax, tax on tax on tax on tax on things that were already taxed. So, like just buying a condo, for example, if you're buying a condo in Toronto, you're paying two taxations, and then you're paying if it's vacant, and then you're paying if there's profits earned, and you're paying HS, and you're paying all these taxes. And so by the
Crazy.
time you're done with it, you're maybe at 150K in taxes. And so what could you do with that? You could invest in a business that you're not even involved with potentially somewhere else, or you could buy a property that cash flows for you, and earn passive income while you're still building your businesses, even in another country. And so we
Hmm.
looked at it like, at what point is it too expensive? And at what point
Yeah.
do we say it's just not okay,
Hmm.
for what we want? And so we just started to look at other markets, and Florida was one of them that still made sense.
And that's really interesting. I'm really glad you touch upon that too, because I'm glad you're the one saying it, because I
Yeah,
sound like a broken record
right,
oftentimes saying that as well. And it's not that you're being cheap about it,
right,
right? It's just, what's the most efficient use of my capital?
for
I
sure.
remember growing up in on the mean streets of Scarborough is where I grew up, like from
Oh,
the
my husband's
70s.
from there. Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
And And for example, my parents, they bought their house in Scarborough. It's like Morningside and Ellesmere for anyone who has a knowledge of the area. It's
Hmm.
near Scarborough campus. And in
Yeah.
1991, they bought their house for around $321,000.
Yeah.
3,000 square foot house, 4 or 5 bedrooms, I think. Today, or at its peak a year ago, I believe it hit 1.7.
Mm.
And I know of so many people, I'm sure you know of so many people too, are sitting on all this equity thinking, I need to pay off the last $100,000 of my mortgage, or I'm mortgage free and I'm sitting on this house with a ton of equity, but I'm still living hand to mouth and I'm not really liking my lifestyle right now. Like, my goodness, if you could just tap into a little bit of that equity and deploy it into a different market
Hmm.
where housing is like, what's the cheapest type of house, like acceptable house that you've seen in Cape Coral? Be honest.
Yeah. An acceptable home is around
Acceptable home.
a really nice home that you're not like, doing a lot. I would say around 350, 375. You
And
could buy an.
describe that. Is it a
Um,
single family home? Is it how many
yeah.
bedrooms? How many bathrooms?
Yeah. So there's one that I saw that was a 3 bedroom home, 2 bath, around 1,500 square feet, single car garage. It's not backing onto a canal, so you don't get a canal. You may have a pool, may not, depending on what it's finished like on the interior for that price point. And you're in a reasonable area. And in that, I'm talking like you could be close to the downtown core. That's like South Cape Coral. If you're going to the newer side of Cape Coral, where you're getting a brand new home, you could buy a beautiful 1,700 square foot detached house for like 400,000, and you're in a new school district, like a nice school area, good families, brand new home. You're not really doing much to the property. So to think about that, like what that difference is, right? Like 400,000 is a
Hmm.
beautiful house.
We're talking GTA prices from like not just 10 years ago, like 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So imagine, and this is what I like to say to people all the time too, is imagine you have the knowledge that you have now of what happened in the Canadian markets, but you have that opportunity again now in
Hmm.
Florida, because the
Exactly.
prices are like that. And people will say, and I'll let me throw this to you: how do we know that cities in Florida are going to follow a similar path
Hmm.
as markets in Canada? Like, sure, we don't know, but Do you have any insights on that, or have you done any like economic research as to the trajectory of Cape Coral?
Yeah, I honestly haven't really done too much research, to be very honest with you. I focus a lot on the Toronto market, so I haven't looked too deep into it. But can say when I have been there, they've been building quite a bit of infrastructure to support the area, and I think
Yes.
there's you may know this actually. Is it called 12 mile 12? I forget what it's called. There's like this huge strip being built there with retail. Um, Obviously, now with the hurricane that has passed, we were involved in that
Hmm.
as well. It's really cleaning up the area. It's allowing them to actually improve what was old infrastructure, rebuilding, rehabilitating the entire area. And I don't know specific numbers, but I can tell you based on what I'm seeing, like we put on webinars every once in a while, to talk just about Florida in general. And we're seeing an uptick of like 170 to 200 people per call, per families
Mm,
per call every quarter jumping on our webinars to learn more. We started out with maybe 20, 30. Now we're up like close to 200. So it's just
mm.
showing you how many people are coming in, not just from Canada. When we're there, we see other states coming in, so it's not just Canadians, right?
Yeah, it's something that on the one hand too I think would need to be experienced, as you said,
Yeah.
like just seeing the growth in infrastructure from different people I've interviewed on this podcast, and their specialties and their preferences are different cities. I hear that a lot, where you see a lot of infrastructure happening. So
Hmm.
it's like a lot of the cities in Florida are retooling, or they're getting ready for population boom.
Hmm.
And I always point out to my wife when we're driving around, because we love going on weekend trips. As you may recall, I'm in
Yeah.
Orlando, but we're always going on weekend
Weekend trips. Yeah.
road trips to different cities, different markets, checking out different beaches, and we're always seeing a lot of infrastructure. And I point out that in government, especially with all the bureaucracy in the U.S., there's
Hmm.
a lot of studies and a lot of money that's poured into the decision making of that process, like to widen the
Hmm.
roads, to put a
Right.
new Terminal C
Sure.
at Orlando
Freeways.
International Airport.
Yeah.
All those things. There's a lot of money, and a lot of consulting, a lot of bureaucracy, and the fact that it's actually shovels in the ground and it's happening means that the window is closing.
Hmm.
That's the way I really look at it, and so I'm really excited for you and your business. Tell me a little bit more about how what is it you help families relocate to
Yeah.
Florida specifically?
Yeah, so I have a bit of a niche market. It started out with my husband and I looking at this entire process like I had shared, and then slowly my niche market has now changed. So I have a signature proven process called the Make Your Move method. I am a real estate broker that services families in Ontario, and I help families relocate from out of busy neighborhoods of the GTA. So usually it's families that live in busy neighborhoods that want to move for lifestyle reasons. So I help families move to other areas of Ontario up north and cross border into the state of Florida. And I host every quarter, I host webinar calls for families that are Canadian who want to learn more about how they can too relocate, build business, and earn the capital that they need to make their moves. I help families also leverage selling their existing property because, as we know, capital is important when we're making moves. And so we strategize their move to make sure that it makes sense, making them the most amount of money in the right market. We help with downsizing, we help with packing, we help with making sure that they are relocating the dates, they're planning the dates effectively. So if they are making their move across border, we're making sure that the dates are lining up. We're making sure that they have somewhere to stay. So they're also using a lot of my connections that I've built up when it comes to hyper local agents that I'm referring them to. I also help with getting them connected with the right lenders because, of course, they're coming with Canadian funds to the US, accounting, bookkeeping services, business broker connections. And so the list goes on. But my primary focus is to help facilitate their move with the sale of their primary residence. And for some people, what we're doing is they're either selling their home and their business entirely and doing a move like we talked about. And for some people, they're actually taking their principal residence, maybe downsizing. We're actually downsizing them to keep one home in Canada so that they can take away some capital that they need while still maintaining a property here and using the extra funds to build and fund their businesses and their lifestyle in the US. So we create strategies for them through our Make Your Move method.
Awesome. And then
Yeah,
how can people get in touch with you if any part of what you've said resonates
yeah,
with them?
absolutely. So I'm happy to book a call and they can find me by searching versglobal.com. I'm sure you'll
How do you
connect
spell
with me.
that?
VERZ or Z, depending where you are, global.com. Then you can book a call.
verzglobal.com.
Yes, versglobal.com.
Wonderful. Well, I'm
Thank you.
sure this is not the last time that you and I will speak. Thank you so much for taking out the time with your busy schedule to share your Florida stories with us, Stephanie.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and your time. Thank you.